She was just a cargo pilot. No weapons. No escort. Just medicine boxes in a slow gray plane. Then 8 enemy jets surrounded her from every side. Nobody thought she would survive. But in the next few minutes, she destroyed all 8, without firing a single shot. Before you watch full story, comment below from which country are you watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more amazing stories. Captain Maya Reyes had one job that morning. Fly a slow gray cargo plane full of medical supplies from a small air base to a hospital near the front line. No weapons on board. No fighter escort. Just boxes of bandages, blood bags, and antibiotics, and a crew of 3 tired men who trusted her to get them there safely. The other pilots on the base did not think much of her. To them, she was just the woman who flew the flying truck, the big slow plane that carried food, medicine, and mail. She wore the same uniform as everyone else, but she rarely spoke about her past. Nobody asked. Everybody assumed a cargo pilot had always been a cargo pilot. That morning, the sky was clear and blue. Maya walked around her plane before takeoff, checking the engines and the wheels the way she always did. Her flight engineer, Sergeant Cole, joked that she checked the plane more carefully than a mother checks a baby. Maya smiled but did not laugh. She always said that careful pilots grow old, and careless pilots do not. They took off at 7 in the morning. The plane was heavy with supplies, so it climbed slowly into the sky. Below them, green hills rolled toward the horizon, and far away, smoke rose from a town that had been hit by fighting the night before. Maya kept her eyes on the sky, not just the ground. Old habits die hard, and some of her habits came from a life she never talked about. An hour into the flight, the radio crackled. A calm voice from ground control said that enemy radar had picked up unknown aircraft heading toward the same valley Maya was flying through. At first, nobody worried. Enemy jets rarely came this far from the border. But then the voice on the radio changed. It became fast and worried. For enemy fighters were closing in, and they were heading straight for Maya's unarmed cargo plane. Sergeant Cole turned pale. "Captain, we don't have weapons. We don't have escorts. What do we do?" Maya did not answer right away. She looked out the window at the empty sky ahead, and for a moment, something in her eyes changed. It was not fear. It was focus, the kind of focus a person only gets from years of training that most people never see. "Strap in," she said quietly. "All of you. Now." The first 2 enemy jets appeared as small dots in the distance, then grew larger every second. They were fast fighter planes, built for speed and attack, nothing like Maya's slow cargo plane. Any normal transport pilot would have called for help and prayed. But Maya did something nobody in that plane expected. She grabbed the controls harder, checked her instruments, and pushed the plane into a sharp turn that no cargo pilot should have been able to do. The plane groaned under the stress, but it held together. The enemy jets, expecting an easy, slow target, overshot their first attack run. Maya used the extra seconds to drop the plane's altitude fast, skimming low over a ridge of hills, using the land to hide from enemy radar. "How do you know how to do that?" Cole shouted over the noise of the engines. "Later," Maya said. "Right now, just hold on." The truth was that Maya Reyes had not always flown cargo planes. Years earlier, she had flown fighter jets, some of the fastest and most advanced in the sky. She had graduated at the top of her class, better than almost every pilot she trained with. But 3 years before this flight, her younger brother, also a fighter pilot, had been shot down and killed during a mission. After his death, something inside Maya broke. She requested a transfer away from fighter jets, away from weapons, away from the kind of flying that had taken her brother's life. The military gave her a cargo plane instead, thinking a quiet job would help her heal. Nobody at her new base knew about her past. She never told them, and they never asked. Back in the sky, the enemy jets regrouped and came in for a second attack. This time, 3 jets split up to attack from different sides, boxing Maya's cargo plane in. Any pilot without her training would have panicked. Instead, Maya scanned each jet's position, calculated their speed, and chose the one weak point in their formation, the small gap between 2 jets that had not yet fully turned. She pushed the throttle forward as far as it would go and aimed the heavy cargo plane straight through that gap. The 2 enemy jets, surprised by the bold move, had to break away hard to avoid a collision. One jet's wing clipped the edge of a rocky hill as its pilot pulled up too late and too sharply, sending it spinning down in a trail of smoke. The other jet spun out of control trying to recover from the sudden turn and crashed into the valley floor below. 2 enemy jets were gone, and Maya had not fired a single shot. She had used only skill, speed, and the terrain. Inside the cargo plane, Cole and the other crew members held on to their seats, shaking. "That's 2 of them down," Cole said, his voice trembling with disbelief. You just flew them into the ground." Maya did not answer. She was already watching the remaining 2 jets adjust their attack pattern. These pilots were more careful now. They stayed higher, out of reach of the hills, and prepared for a proper missile lock instead of a close attack. A warning light flashed red on Maya's dashboard. A missile lock alarm. One of the enemy jets had found its target and was ready to fire. "Brace for evasive action," Maya shouted. She dropped the plane into a steep dive, then pulled up hard at the last second, releasing flares that lit up the sky like burning stars. The heat-seeking missile chased the flares instead of the plane, exploding harmlessly behind them. The cargo plane shook violently from the near miss, but it held. More enemy jets appeared on radar. Command had been wrong. It was not 4 jets coming after Maya's plane, it was 8. A second group had been hiding further back, waiting to strike once the first wave weakened their target. Now all 8 were closing in from different directions, and Maya's cargo plane, slow and unarmed, had nowhere left to run. "We're not going to make it," one of the crew members said quietly. "Yes, we are," Maya answered, and for the first time, there was something steady and calm in her voice, the voice of someone who had done this kind of thing before, long ago, in a different plane, in a different life. She remembered her brother's voice from years earlier, teaching her one simple lesson before her very first fighter mission: an enemy pilot fights with anger, but a good pilot fights with patience. She had never forgotten that lesson. Now she used it. Instead of running, Maya slowed the plane down suddenly, dropping speed just enough to make the incoming jets overshoot their attack angle. Fighter pilots are trained to expect fast, evasive prey. A target that suddenly becomes slow throws off their timing. 2 more jets shot past her position, unable to correct their attack fast enough, and had to peel away wide to try again, wasting valuable seconds and fuel. While they turned, Maya dove the plane into a narrow canyon, one she remembered from an old training map she had studied years ago as a fighter pilot. The canyon walls were close enough to scrape both wings if she was not careful, but Maya held the controls steady, guiding the heavy plane through the twisting rock walls like threading a needle. 2 enemy jets, trying to follow her into the canyon, misjudged the turn. Their wings clipped the canyon walls, and both jets went down in fiery crashes. 4 enemy jets destroyed now, and still, Maya had not fired a single weapon of her own. Every crash had come from her flying skill, and from enemy mistakes made while chasing her. For a moment, the cabin was quiet except for the roar of the engines. One of the young crew members, a medic named Private Hayes, sat frozen with his hands gripping the edge of his seat. He had joined the flight only to check the medical boxes, not to survive a battle in the sky. He looked at Maya, half in fear and half in wonder, and asked if she had ever been this scared before. Maya did not answer right away. Her mind drifted, just for a second, to the last radio call she had ever heard from her brother, calm and steady even as his jet went down. She had promised herself back then that fear would never control her hands again, only her focus would. She told Hayes that fear was fine, everyone felt it, but panic was the only real enemy in the sky. Hayes nodded slowly, still shaking, but something in her voice settled him. Cole glanced at her too, seeing for the first time the quiet weight she had carried alone for years. But 4 jets remained, and they were no longer careless. These pilots had watched their friends die and had learned from it. They spread out wide, refusing to get close enough for Maya to use the terrain against them again. They planned to fire missiles from a safe distance instead. Maya's plane had no chance against long-range missiles fired from 4 directions at once. She needed something more than flying skill this time. She turned to Cole. The emergency flare pods and the old chaff dispensers in the cargo bay, the ones meant for testing, are they still hooked up? Cole blinked, surprised. Yes, but those were only meant for training exercises, not real combat. They'll work, Maya said. Get them ready. While Cole scrambled to the back of the plane, Maya flew a wide, unpredictable pattern, weaving left and right just enough to confuse the targeting systems locking onto her. It bought precious time. When Cole gave the signal that the flare and chaff systems were ready, Maya released everything at once, a massive cloud of flares and metal strips that filled the sky behind the plane. 3 missiles fired at almost the same moment, all of them fooled by the sudden burst of decoys. They exploded harmlessly in the cloud of flares, far from the actual plane. But the 4th missile, fired from a sharper angle, was not fooled. It kept locked onto the real target. Maya saw the missile trail on her radar screen, closing fast. There was no time for another decoy. She made a decision that only a trained fighter pilot would even think to try. She cut power to one engine and turned the heavy plane almost onto its side, dropping altitude so fast that the crew screamed as their stomachs lifted. The sudden, violent maneuver was something the missile's tracking system could not predict. It swept past the plane's wing, missing by only a few meters, and exploded harmlessly against the canyon wall below. The jet that had fired it was flying too low and too fast to stay locked onto her inside the narrow canyon. A second later, its pilot misjudged the tight turn, its wings scraped the rock wall, and it spun down in a burst of flame. Maya leveled the plane back out, breathing hard, sweat running down her face. 5 jets down now, whether from her flying, the terrain, or their own mistakes chasing her. 3 jets remained, and this time, they made one final, desperate decision. Instead of firing more missiles from a distance, all 3 pilots decided to close in together and attack head-on, hoping to overwhelm the slow cargo plane with sheer numbers and gunfire at close range. Maya watched the 3 jets forming a tight line ahead of her, flying straight toward her plane in a direct, aggressive approach. It was risky and reckless, exactly the kind of move an angry, desperate pilot makes. Patience beats anger, Maya whispered to herself, repeating her brother's old lesson one more time. She pushed the cargo plane's nose down at the very last second, diving just below the line of incoming jets. The move was so sudden and unexpected that 2 of the 3 jets, flying close together, had to jerk their controls hard to avoid slamming into each other while trying to follow her dive. Their wings touched in the confusion, and both jets spun out of control, crashing into the hills below in a tangle of smoke and fire. Only one enemy jet remained. This last pilot, seeing 7 of his squadron destroyed one after another, seemed to lose his nerve. He had watched a cargo plane, a plane that should have been an easy target, destroy his entire squadron without firing a single weapon. For a moment, his jet slowed, as if he was unsure whether to keep fighting. Maya used that moment of hesitation. She turned her heavy plane directly toward him instead of running, a bold and unexpected move that most transport pilots would never dare to make. The enemy pilot panicked at the sudden aggressive turn from an unarmed cargo plane. He rolled hard to break away and dropped low over the ridge to escape, but his nerves cost him precision. His wing caught the edge of the rock face, and his jet went down in the same hills that had already claimed so many of his squadron. The 8th jet was gone. Maya had faced 8 enemy fighters with an unarmed cargo plane, and not one of them made it home. The sky was finally quiet again. Maya leveled the plane, checked the instruments, and let out a long, shaking breath. Behind her, Cole and the other crew members sat in stunned silence, staring at her as if seeing her for the first time. "Who are you?" Cole finally asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Maya looked out at the calm blue sky ahead of them. "I used to fly fighters," she said quietly. "Before my brother died. I thought I was done with all of that." They landed safely at the hospital base 20 minutes later, delivering every box of medical supplies without a single one damaged. Ground crews rushed out to check the plane, confused by the damage on its wings and the scorch marks along its side, wondering how a simple cargo plane had survived what radar reports were already calling an ambush by 8 enemy fighters. Within days, the story spread across the base, then across other bases, then finally to command headquarters. Radar recordings and radio transmissions were reviewed carefully. Investigators were amazed to find that the cargo plane had destroyed all 8 enemy jets, using nothing but flying skill, terrain, decoys, and controlled risk, without firing a single shot from a weapon it did not even carry. Maya was called in for a long debrief. She told them everything, her past as a fighter pilot, her brother's death, and why she had asked to fly cargo planes instead. The military, impressed and grateful, offered to return her to fighter jets, offering her a position leading a new training program for young pilots. Maya thought about it for a long time. In the end, she chose something different. She agreed to train new pilots, but not to fly fighters again herself. She stayed a cargo pilot, flying supplies to hospitals and bases that needed them, but now she also taught young fighter pilots twice a month, sharing the lessons her brother once taught her. Years later, one of her students asked her during a training class why someone with her skill would choose to keep flying a slow cargo plane instead of a fighter jet. Maya smiled and said, "Because the real skill was never about the plane. It was about staying calm when everyone expects you to panic. Fighter jets carry weapons. But sometimes, the most dangerous person in the sky is the one nobody expects to be dangerous at all." The pilots who had faced her that day, the ones who survived, never forgot what they had seen. Among themselves, they gave her a name that stuck for years afterward, whispered in briefing rooms and pilot lounges long after the war ended, the ghost of the cargo plane, the pilot who flew unarmed into an ambush of 8 fighters, and flew out alone, having beaten them all without ever firing a shot.